information, essentially. Tautology doesn't, it's, either Trump is going to win or Trump is not going to win. What kind of information have I given you? The appropriate response to that is the one that Homer gives us, where he goes, duh, or however, duh. How do you, D-O-H?
Oh yeah, he goes dough.
Yeah, it must be because I remember the dough of Homer instead of the Tao of,
The Tao of Who.
It's a book. That's sort of a quasi-Buddhist joking book based on Homer Simpson, the cartoon character. So tautologies are also sometimes called logical truths or truths of logic, which are no information, because tautologies can be recognized as true solely in virtue of the principles of the logic, the propositional logic, the rules, right? Now, it's different, I think, when we look at the ontological argument. Because when we talk about the definition of God as that than which nothing greater can be thought, now you're dealing with a proof that basically suggests from a statement we can demonstrate that a certain characteristic in the real world must be the case, right? That something must exist. I think it works because, by definition, you're not really looking for a certain set of characteristics that people typically think of as God. You're saying that, well, whatever is that than which nothing greater can be thought. And so basically, at least the universe is that than which nothing greater can be thought. If you can't think of anything greater than the universe, well, but what does that imply? That implies that the universe exists and that it's snowing. Which, by the way, it is. Even heavier. I wonder if we're going to get an email. Everybody run for your lives.
No, honestly.
It's
so bad out there.
Yeah, it's getting gnarly.
Yeah.
I live in the view, so.
It's a walk home road. Something.
Well, I'm part hobbit, so I can just take my shoes off and I've got furry feet and I can walk through the snow. Sorry about that.
I used to say, hey, it's snowing, at least it's warm.
Well, I remember driving from an exercise up in Delta or whatever,
Junction.
and coming back at night in a snowstorm. And I was in the Hummer leading the whole battalion
Oh.
with my lieutenant who didn't know where he was.
Yeah, you're leading the whole battalion.
And the road was getting deep enough that I actually had to remember where the road was in order to find it.
It's
And
an early one, too.
I made it. We made it home.
Humvees are not as good as people think they are.
All right, so what are we looking at here? The truths of logic. What have we got in this one here? P or not P. Clearly, such a statement cannot be true. Okay, so this is a contradiction. So the earlier one, we looked at P or not P. This one is P and not P. So Trump is going to win and Trump is not going to win. That's a contradiction. That cannot happen because however we evaluate the potato, done or not done, it can't be both at once, right? And as a result, notice in this case that when you look on the table underneath the main operator, it's false in both cases. And so that's called a contradiction. So definition, a self-contradiction if and only if it is false for all possible truth value assignments. to the statement letters making it up. Notice you can have more compound examples of this. So again, just as we did with the tautology, well, actually, we still just have P and Q here. We didn't add a third statement, but instead, if you look, we've got the negation of an if-then statement and the negation of the transposition of that statement, because you've got if P then Q and if Q then P. And actually, if P then Q is equivalent to if Q then P. So negating it, you're negating this one, essentially. Transposition just says that if you have a statement if P then Q, that's equivalent to saying,
If Q then P.
actually, how'd it go? Transposition. Let me take a look here. Actually, I'm sure transposition is in here. Did I do anything? I did not. I'm typing away and I'm actually not succeeding in, well, we'll look at that later on. That's the point that they're making here is these two are false because you're conjoining statements that are contradictions. It's just that it's more complex looking, so you have to look harder to find out that that's the case. But still, it's a
Guys,
self-contradiction.
I am partially deaf. Can you like whisper? Because I can't hear what he's saying. This is my best ear.
Alright, yeah, whatever.
But whatever, me homie, we're gonna end up with issues.
In any case, I'll try to talk louder too, which just means I'll be wronger.
We're wrong in a loud tone.
I'll be louder. So they're suggesting, okay, a statement that is neither self-contradictory nor tautological is called contingent, which is really what we mean by most statements that we're saying this statement is true. It's contingent, actually, on the context. It's contingent on all the things that are either corresponding in your mind to that statement being true. It's snowing out. Well, that's the case, right? Or if it's a coherence, 2 + 2 = 4. Well, yeah, if you don't agree that that's true, you're not allowed to play math. You're out of the game because that's the rule, right? You have to believe that.
That's contingent.
That's the religion of mathematics, right?
Don't. I'm splitting hairs.
Axioms are the fundamental fundamental dogmas of the religion of mathematics. Is that weird to call it that? Most people don't call mathematics a religion.
It's a dogma.
I can explain myself though. Let me leave this pretty page for a minute and go to my class notes and go to other items and go to what is religion, which we haven't discussed yet in this class. That's probably too small, isn't it? Can you still see it? Okay, so in philosophy, a lot of people are amazed, especially in like a history course where you talk about the history of philosophy and you're looking at how many periods, over 1,000 years, philosophy was co-equal in a sense to the religious dogmas of the Middle Ages. Basically, if you were a philosopher, you were also a theologian.
That's only because theologians were the only scholars.
Well, and it was the most progressive point of view up to that point. as well. If you look at the whole thing as a narrative that says, there's, the beginnings, and then there's progress. We invented tools. Then we have better tools. Then we have even better tools. Now we have AI. Some people are afraid that AI is going to imply that's the end of humanity, and we'll have computers, robots walking around with red lights on instead of blue lights, and humans are just carbon units infesting Enterprise. That's a Star Trek thing. But so what is religion? In fact, I could even ask you this as part of test 3. Test 3 is due November 9th, so that's coming up, and so I'm already trying to think what kinds of questions can I ask that you can respond to in essay responses, especially when we're doing this kind of logic. I mean, we're supposed to be doing propositional logic, and then we move on to a predicate logic, which we've already talked to about a little bit. And none of that actually works very well in an essay. I've been thinking, how can I get you to write essays about this stuff, and none of it works. But I was thinking about some other stuff, and one of the things is something that I mentioned several times. We treat axioms as if you can't doubt them, and yet all you have to do is put not in front of it, and notice it instantly becomes doubtable. So 0 is a number. That's a principle that you have to accept in mathematics, as far as I know, right? And the thing is, you can actually say, no, it isn't. 0 is not a number. There are some people, I think, actually, that are heretics in mathematics that would say that. Well, so my answer is religion is belief in a narrative. Actually, specifically a meta-narrative, which is a narrative that's a big narrative that incorporates all the smaller narratives. So if you think of us as homo neurons, man the storyteller, which is, anthropologically, there's tons of things supporting that. When we look at ancient man, how did they pass on knowledge? They told stories. We have some contemporaries that we think of as primal. In a way, sometimes we refer to that as primitive, which, sounds like you're belittling the primal nature of some people's lives. But if you think of it, the primal nature is this comes first. This is and or a not. Those are the primal characteristics of human thought. But when you look at those kind of, especially even here, local cultures, and you listen to the narratives that are told, they are very basic. I'm out looking, and usually, of course, if you think that these are narratives told in a small space with a full number of people in that small space, you don't have a lot of room to move and so on. So typically they're dancing without moving. They stay, in where they're standing, but move in that space and move their arms to indicate, the various things that they're expressing. But what they are telling is like hunting stories and things of that sort, which are not narratives in the sense that they have a beginning, middle, and end. Well, maybe they do. It's just, the beginning is I'm paddling, I'm looking, right? I'll look left, I'll look right. They're usually bilaterally symmetrical, by the way. But as you listen to these, they're looking, they spot the prey, right? And then they paddle harder, then they, throw their spear and they pull in the prey and then they paddle back, right? So yes, there is a beginning, middle, and end, perhaps because we can't imagine anything without a beginning, middle, and end. It's just that, is it the individual leaving to go on a quest? Well, yes, it is.